So this will serve as the part 2 to our lecture. And so sorry, there was a disruption in the house. So back to adaptability. And so I was explaining how young children may need some cues to move from one situation to another. So like we wouldn't just tell a child having just started a new game at the park, like, it's time to go, we're leaving this second, right? And expect them to be like, okay, let's go. I mean, hey, it happens sometimes, but a lot of times they might struggle with that, right? And so we want to really foster their ability to change environments and on their level that's age appropriate, right? So some children who are struggling with adapting might look like a child witnesses or are told to use physical aggression when needed, maybe like at home, right? And then they struggle with school rules not to do so, right? So they're struggling to now adapt to the school environment where there's rules, where you don't hit your friends when you're upset, right? But maybe that's what they learned at home. There's also the example that some children just struggle when their routines are disrupted, right? And so that's something that we need to know and be aware of and to work with that child at their level. And so if you want to go to your scale, just to the far left is they struggle to adapt, or to the far right, they adapt easily to new situations. And so that's it really for our scale. And now we are going to go over, and then just really thinking about that scale, you could really think about where those kids land, that, you've been thinking of through it, and see like where you, a thought for you to carry on is, where could you help them foster growth, and how, right? And so that's where we're going into now, is that application of helping build these life skills. Where these children who fall more on the right side, right, might be considered more quote unquote easy, and they're stronger in these skills, or there's also the children who fall more on the left side, right, who have they're a little bit more weaker in some of these skills, and have more difficulties, right? And so we are using this class to help all of those children grow in these life skills. I've gone to a lot of trainings and I've received a lot of enlightening and helpful information to better understand children, which is 100% helpful. It can reduce, just like having the knowledge can reduce your stigma, and it can increase your empathy, right, for children who might be harder to connect with, and it can help guide you. However, I would say a deficit from a lot of trainings I had in my earlier years, I'd be like, okay, cool, but like now what? Like now how do I help them, right? And so we sometimes don't get that piece as much, or as much as we need. And so this class is really going to be focusing on that application and helping build those life skills. And that's why the third part of our project is the PowerPoint, where we are teaching each other different skills to utilize with children to help foster these life skills. So we're going to learn from each other. So we are reviewing, there's different types of helping the life skills, right? And so we're going to be reviewing behavioral skills. So there's reward charts and consequences, and we're going to go into those on the next few slides. But what works better than those? So that's like the go-tos, right? It's that like, oh my gosh, you did a good job, here's a sticker. Oh, you didn't, you were mean to Samantha, so go sit over there, go away from the group, right, as a consequence. So those are very quick like ways we go, and they're not always the helpful way, right? And so we're going to go more into that in terms of developing and fostering these life skills. So maybe a quick short-term solution we did there, but the kids learned nothing from it. And so what's better are finding ways that strengthen the weak skills that they have that underlie the behavior that are underneath the behavior, instead of focusing directly on the behavior. So it's kind of like that iceberg effect, right? Like there's the behavior at the top of the surface we see, and then underneath the water there, and use this as a visual example for kids, are the feelings, right? What's underneath that hitting of the children, right? What's underneath it? Oh, that fear of not belonging, right? And so that's what we work with. And so very similarly with this. An example I said here, like a child takes a toy away from a peer and is now removed from the group as a consequence. What did the child learn from that, right? And so there's some really good questions that you can review on page 11 of your text. Let's go there now, for you to ask yourself later on. So if you see under the bold, under each life skill, so will a strategy you're going to be implementing move the child to see you as a supportive and loving ally, or as an opponent who works against her? And so these are really great ones to be thinking of when you're thinking of what child we're actually learning from. And so this circle of concern photo I put here, and if you see in the middle a circle of control, you need to ask yourself, who's in control? So if you're trying to get someone to come inside from recess, who's in control? You? For them to physically get inside, you or the child? The child. You're actually not fully in control, right? And so if you start playing the control, the control struggle, now you're just at a power struggle. And you're not really teaching them anything. You're just butting heads. It's like, opposite. It's you really are just butting heads. There's not a better way to say it. And you ultimately might lose. There's some strong kids out there who are going to really assert their control. And so where you want to fall then in that sort of scenario is circle of influence, because the control is really, you only really have control over yourself, right? And so as a teacher, often you fall under circle of influence. And, my work as a therapist, right, has been in the circle of influence. And so this particular area is, how can we influence them to come inside on their own, right, without giving a consequence, without, doing a reward chart. And then the circle of concern are things that are the concern that might be out of your control, right? And so you can in this area you could even provide resources to people that could help support the child for that circle area of concern. Okay. So how do we expand that circle of influence? And so these are 4 areas of ways we can. So developing a community based on mutual respect. So help that child feel, part of that community, a part of that classroom. Establishing yourself as each child's strongest ally and most loyal cheerleader. Focus on maintaining healthy relationships while avoiding judgment. Concentrate on relationships and the social and emotional climate of the classroom. And so, let's say you have a child who struggles a little bit more to stand how they're supposed to in line, right? I hear that one a lot. Have them maybe be your helper. Have them be front of the line, or be right next to you to help, do certain things. So there's ways that you can help foster the influence and ways to promote growth in the life skill, as opposed to just expecting them to behave, each child equally the same way, as if they all are on the same page on each life skill. And then if they're not, they get a consequence, right? Because that consequence is teaching them what exactly, long-term wise, right? So, punishments. So, punishing children doesn't ultimately help the child develop strengths. They will need to thrive when they're older. So punishment can lead to actually reducing their growth and learning life skills and social and emotional competency, especially if it's dangerous for them, the punishment, right? It can be very damaging. So you want to ask yourself, does the action that you had taken help the child grow towards improving their life skills? Does it provide a lesson for them to learn from, or does it simply punish child for not having this skill? It's a great question. I honestly ask myself this all the time, and even just my parenting. Very helpful. Another question, would we punish a child for not knowing how to count, or would we teach them how to count, right? So it's the same for social and emotional developmental skills. Like we can't punish someone for lacking the skill. We help them learn the skill, right? So children may need a lot of practice, just like adults do, to learn a new skill, to be more of an automatic response. And so it requires patience on the adult. Mistaken belief is that making a child pay for the chaos or upset feelings they have created is the fastest road to making them act good. We see it all the time, right? It doesn't always make them act good. And actually, like, let's say you just say, and consequences can happen, right? But we have to teach children that there are consequences in life, just like there's rules and laws we have to abide by. But like, if you just take away everything from your child every time they do something wrong, do you think they're going to go, oh, wow, I really see why it's important to not do this? A lot of times they think it's no fair, right? Rewards. So rewards are fun. I mean, hey, I like giving out rewards to kids, I'll be honest. But what are they teaching the child? So rewards do not model the positive behavior we want children to imitate, okay? Modeling, it actually, so providing rewards all the time for everything the child does, it could model bribing for positive behavior, and then consequences, which is like threats for negative behavior, right? Or you don't get to go do this because you did not do that I wanted you to do, right? And so then when this is what you're modeling as the adult, that's what the child models. So for an example here, I'm saying, you might hear from a child, I'm going to break this toy then if you don't let me play with it. Where'd they learn that, right? From modeling. And so it might improve behavior short term, but it does not increase the intrinsic motivation to do well. Because if you remove the reward, are they still motivated to do that task or still motivated to complete what they needed to do? Most oftentimes, no, they're not. We have to increase that intrinsic motivation. The question to ask ourselves, do we want children to only want to do well if they're getting a reward? I mean, I can answer that and absolutely say no. I want them to have the right reasons to want to earn something, or to have something. And so, like, for example, I want my kids to collaborate with others because that's what we do in a community, in a society, and helping others and treating others the way we want to be treated, and building mutual respect with others. I don't want them to treat others well because then they get a sticker, right? I want them to do it because they know that's what's right. So how can we help? So we can have supportive interactions, so modeling behavior, how we talk to children becomes their self-talk, the actions we take, the beliefs, all of that spelling right there, don't know what happened there. The beliefs you have about individual children and the learning environment you establish will be directly reflected in children's behavior and beliefs about themselves and each other. So if there's a child who is stressing you out because you don't know how to deal with them, they feel it. And they will they will feel it, and they will you'll see it within their behavior as well. Whereas, a child who feels very at peace with an adult, they're gonna model that as well, feeling that sense, right? We can create the classroom culture to have rituals and routines. We can establish a classroom culture that supports the social and emotional lessons we want to pass on to the children in our care. And we can have special activities. So we can have activities that reinforce the lessons for children to get from supportive interactions and the classroom culture. So we can do this by adding social emotional activities. So an example is freeze dance. Super fun, right? You're teaching children self-regulation within that. You're teaching children how to do quite a few things actually in the freeze dance, but that can also go with adaptability, moving to one thing to the next. But you can teach 100% these life skills in such fun ways for children. So I wanted to quickly go over children who need extra support. So this is one of my favorite quotes of working with children who have had experienced a lot of trauma is, remember, the kids who need the most love will ask for it in the most unloving ways. And I really want you to think about that for a second. The kids who need the most love will ask for it in the most unloving ways. So when we can build our empathy base for children who have maybe giving us a hard time, they're not those quote unquote easy kids. If we have empathy, that can increase our patience for them, and you'll see them grow. If their attachment skill has been, not fostered in their home life, you can help build that skill back up in the classroom. You truly can have such a huge impact on these children. A lot of children's time is either spent at home or in the classroom, right? So it really is imperative to learn a multitude of professional strategies and interventions to help strengthen those relationships with children. With the children you may even struggle with. And so with my background in, working with children in trauma, we're going to be spending some time in this class, identifying these kiddos that need more help to grow these life skills, and that they should not be labeled as bad or your problem children, or the children, you vent about and you talk poorly about, in the teacher lounge, or that you make sit outside, right? Or go to the office just so they're out of your space. They're the children that need you the most. Okay. So our last item to discuss is our discussion board post for this week. You will be responding to the questions in your text on page 24 and page 25. So if you want to go there now, I am flipping the pages. So I typically write my own discussion board questions, but these were just such good reflections that I thought are great to start this class on. So you will be answering B1 through 4 on page 24, and then the first two questions on page 25, but not number 3. Okay? I think they're really great reflective practices to start the course. So those are due Thursday, and then you'll have until Sunday to respond to one peer's discussion board post and respond to them for full credit for this week. So thank you guys for listening, and I hope you learned a lot, and I'm super excited for this semester.